Okay. No? Or why don't you go to the other room? I think it should be happening now.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Lydia.
No worries, man. All good.
Let's see. You're seeing me?
Yeah, I can see you. Oh.
Sorry, Lydia.
There we go.
Yay!
It's just behind.
It's just behind. Okay, so now we're on the lag time. Got it. Okay, we can get started.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Okay, so for everybody who is watching live, the chat's going crazy. For everybody who's watching live, there's about a 20 to 30 second lag time between our conversation and then the chat and everything like that. So I'll be watching to see if there's anything that pops up. As we learned last time, we want to make sure that we remain professional and we remain appropriate on the live chat. So you guys can chat and react to what your Lydia is talking about and what you're learning. And you can also ask questions if we have time for you to submit questions, but let's make sure that we're only talking about what we're talking about here. So with that, can everybody say hi to Lydia Sewell? Yay! Lydia, it's so good to have you here with all of us today. I'm really thankful that you decided to take the time and that you're doing this all the way from New Zealand, which is crazy.
I know. I flew to New Zealand just for this, you know?
Oh, yeah. Just to make it cool, you know? Okay, so I think there's a couple of things that, this is what I was thinking that we could do. There's a couple of categories of questions that I'm going to ask you, and I figured we could just start off by asking you some questions just to get so the kids can get to know you a little bit. Just so all of you students know, Lydia and I went to school together. We went to college together, so we've known each other for a pretty long time. So
yeah, we're in musicianship together, and
a
lot of music theory papers.
Yes, exactly. So I guess the first question is, where are you from?
Yeah, I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, originally. And yeah, as Stephen said, we did an undergraduate degree together at Azusa Pacific University, which you probably know Stephen went to. I did my master's degree in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and freelanced a while in Chicago. Was performing on a cruise line for a while. And then my parents are from New Zealand, so I decided to move here temporarily. And then that got extended because of coronavirus, but now I'm living in Auckland, New Zealand.
Auckland, very good.
Auckland.
I think that's my favorite name of a city, and it just sounds so fun to say.
It does sound it's just awkward, but it's Auckland.
Yeah, right. Okay, so besides playing violin, what are some of your hobbies or passions? And you can answer this two ways. You can talk about that now, but if you want to, I figured you could answer it maybe like when you were in elementary school or around that age, like what were some of the things that you like to do?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think when you are in elementary school, that's an amazing time to explore your interests. And the things that I learned when I was in primary school or elementary school, I started the violin when I was about 6 years old because my mother played violin, and it was just always something I wanted to do, and my parents are musicians. But I started when I was in elementary school and just kind of did it. Wasn't super serious about it until I was about 15. And what did I do? I was pretty sporty as a kid. So, and again, I'm still sporty kind of now. So those interests that I had as a child were mostly like soccer. I did gymnastics, music, but again, I wasn't super serious about it. And those same interests, ironically enough, I'm 27. I still have. So I do a lot of weightlifting now and I dance a bit as well now. That's not something I did when I was a kid, but we all dance actually as children, and learned piano and violin at a young age. but again, had a really amazing childhood and was just very playful. And I think because it wasn't super serious, that's what helped me a lot. So in terms of not like advice, but like if you're in primary school and you have an interest, and whether that be in art, in drawing or painting, sketching, dance or drama. Drama is another thing I came late to. When I was about 12, I started acting, although I was always kind of a bit of a, I don't know if you'd call it, I was always an extroverted, outgoing kid. So, but also acting and drama is something that I, even as a 27-year-old, have come back to. And I'm now actually an actor as well in New Zealand. So I'm doing classes and auditions and all that. So yeah, so those same interests I had as a kid have transferred, which is what I would say, get involved in any extracurriculars right now. And if you're in elementary school, because you don't know where they can take you. They might take you like to New Zealand.
Exactly. I love that. So we'll get back to more about your sort of the things that you learned and were interested in and how that led into more of a career as a violinist. But
Sure.
To start, I thought we should talk a little bit just about the violin in general as an instrument, because I'm sure some of my students are super familiar with violin. Maybe they play violin or a family member plays it, and others of them have maybe never really seen one played live before or something like that. So a few questions. In the shortest possible answer, how does a violin work, and how do you play it?
Sure. Okay. So this is the violin. It has 4 strings, E, A, D, and G. There are about 4 main, three, if you count the bass, maybe 4 main instruments that are part of the string family. And they all originated from an instrument called the viol, which back in the 1600s, we had something called the viol da gamba, and they all started off somewhat as this. The first violin was really, I think, made by Andrea Amati in Italy. I want to say like mid 1500s, 1550, 1570. And I've actually seen it in London, which is really cool. But ironically, this hasn't changed. Over the course of 500 years, if you look at other instruments, they've gone through dramatic changes. But the violin, fundamentally, if you look at one 500 years ago, is pretty much the same thing. We tune it with a peg, so it's very similar to guitar. So if any of you play guitar, it's similar, but the only difference you might notice is that this doesn't have any frets. Which makes it kind of hard. And when you're a beginner, when you play Suzuki or play anything else, you'll have little lines here to help you out. But gradually, when you get older, you don't. We have something called a chin rest, which helps support the violin. And then we also have something called a shoulder rest. So unlike guitar, you might have a strap. Violin, you don't have a strap. So this always goes in the left shoulder. Another difference between guitar and violin is guitar, you can probably play it left hand or right hand. Violin, I've never seen a right-handed violinist, but it's always this way. And the reason for that, why we don't play it on this side, is because if you play in an orchestra, you'll notice that all of the violinists are all playing in the same direction. And you can imagine that if one violinist has their violin here and another there, the bows are going to collide and it's going to be a sword fight. So that's probably not a good idea. So another common question a lot of kids ask is, what's the difference between a violin and a fiddle? They're the same instrument. There might be a difference in the quality, but mainly it's a style of playing. So fiddle music is something that's primarily in first position. And then maybe other violin playing, you kind of move. Yeah.
And first position just means a little bit like the notes played lower on the strings, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to just demonstrate a little bit. I haven't warmed up this morning, but so that's kind of more fiddle music. And you can notice that I'm not changing my hand. Whereas, I mean, you can move your hand, and that's probably more in classical violin. You're moving a lot up and down. So that's kind of a common question I thought I would just say. But yeah, so that's kind of a little bit about the violin.
Cool. What are just 2 very specific random questions?
No, it's okay. Just a second, Stephen.
Oh,
Michelle,
okay.
Okay, never mind, go for it.
Okay. So what are the strings made out of? And what is the bow made out of?
Question. Yeah, so the bow is made out of wood, and this is horsehair. So yeah, this is horsehair. So they kind of range in price. We call this the frog. Sometimes this is made out of ebony. Probably not now. Used to be made out of ivory, which is elephant husk, but not now. This is the tip of the bow. Back in the day, a bow used to be like, it's called a bow because it's kind of like, looks like a bow and arrow, right? So the bow back in the olden times, like 1600s, the wood would kind of go like this a bit. So it would, I don't have my Baroque bow with me, but so the actual horsehair would be very much more like this. Now the shape, instead of going up, you can see there's a bit, it's kind of dipping a bit. And that it's also got longer. So back in the olden times, it used to be here, and now we lengthen the bow so we have more sound that we can produce, and we can produce a bigger sound. Yeah.
Cool. And then the strings are made out of just some random
question. Sorry. The strings are made out of, now they're made out of steel, but they used to be made out of gut. So they used to be made out of like sheep gut. When I say gut, I mean like this, the internal organs kind of looped together of an animal. So you kind of think of that like Native Americans used to use a lot of sinew as a string. So they use that in Baroque violin, and I should say that Baroque, goodness, you could probably help me out. I forgot what Baroque means, but it was an era back in the 17 to 1800s when they used to, very early days of music. And so the strings were made out of gut. We still had wood, but kind of different materials. But again, not changing a lot if you think about in the way other industries have changed. Yeah.
Great. Love that. Okay. So I hope that that's like a good introduction for some of my students who didn't know much about the violin, the way it's constructed and built together, and the way you play it. So now, Lydia, just a couple of other questions about, you started to talk about how you learned and developed your skills to be a violinist. So you said you started taking it seriously around when you were around 15 years old. So maybe like what, or who inspired you to start taking it more seriously about that time?
I think when you reach, it can really depend. Some kids get serious when they're 8. So basically when I was 6, I did it casually for 2 years, and probably like a lot of students, I did start on Suzuki method, and I teach beginners Suzuki method. It's a very great approach to learning music because it teaches you the correct posture. And I will say the posture and correct technique is the most important thing when you're starting out. It's really hard. It's really annoying to kind of wait a long time to figure out your bow hold and be able to hold the violin. But I wasn't learning how to hold the violin until maybe 2 months in. I had like a plastic violin. I didn't even have a real one. So it's a long process with the violin, but I started getting more serious, 13, 14. And what more serious looked like for me was every day after school, practicing 45 minutes to an hour. So just like you would have a sport where you practice after school for 2 hours for club soccer, you do the same with music. The only difference with music is it's more quite actually an introverted profession because you spend a lot of alone time with your instrument, just working on it and developing basics. So, but again, you just have to develop a habit of practicing every day. And also, I tried not to think about it as I have to practice. I try to think of it, this is my playtime with an instrument that I get to have. Instead of a have to, it's a want to. It became a want to for me when I was 12 or 13, 14, when I started playing more interesting repertoire. And when my skill level finally matched my standard in my head. So what I really could imagine myself sounding like finally matched reality. And that's when I was got really excited. I won a concerto competition when I was 14 or 15 on a concerto and played with the youth orchestra, Wisconsin Youth Orchestra. My dad conducted. That was super cool. And that experience really helped me as well realize, I think I can do this. But also just realize, even if you're a kid, just keep trying, and you don't have to be perfect. The worst mindset that I had when I was starting out was trying to impress my teacher. Yeah, and I should have just done it for myself. So, even if you are learning an instrument, the whole point of it is to keep making mistakes so that you just learn and learn and learn and learn. And you make mistakes, so now you know how to do it better. So, so I probably about 14, 15, I got more serious, and that led me to be able to audition for college. Cool. And get into music.
I love that. And I love especially you talking about how the best way to approach something like practicing, and I think this goes for anything, when you watch professionals practice, whether it's an athlete or a musician, anybody who's a professional at something, when they're practicing, most of the time it's like their playtime, right? It's like it's almost approaching it like a game of some kind, and convincing and it's like a muscle where you spend enough time convincing yourself that what you're doing is like a really fun game, and then one day it's like you believe it, and then I have heard a lot of people talk about that transition happening close, and it's closely related to when you start to sound like you want to in your head, right?
Yeah.
So that's like an encouraging thing, I'm sure, for a lot of students to hear. So your first time playing in an orchestra, you said your dad is a conductor, so and you were playing in the Wisconsin Youth Orchestra, so that you started doing that or before you were 14 or 15. That was
I started playing in an orchestra. An orchestra is, in terms of violin or any stringed instrument, any instrument that's in the symphonic scape, which means could be a brass instrument, could be oboe, saxophone, tuba, whatever. Rarely will you play by yourself. And that's the beautiful thing about music, is that even though it requires a lot of time alone to get better. Sorry, you just might hear trumpets, so I'm just going to warn you.
That's okay.
You might hear all these warm-ups happening. So this is real life, guys. This is real. So once you get to that point, you can play together, and it's great. And the most important part about music is learning how to play together. As a professional, I'm in a recording session in about half an hour, and you'll hear a lot of people, if you can't play together, you're not usually going to be hired again. So that training for me started when I was 8 years old, when I was going to youth orchestra every Saturday mornings. I did orchestra for 9 years. So from the age of 9 or 8 till 10 years, actually, till 18, every Saturday morning for 3 hours, I had youth orchestra. So just like a sport. And that taught me how to listen, how to have good rhythm, how to play with someone else. That really started early. Again, right now in elementary school.
Cool. Love that. Now, a couple of sort of quick, fast questions.
Yeah.
One, do you get nervous on stage?
Yes.
You still?
But, okay, so this is really interesting. I was a perfectionist when I was a kid, and I still was very conscientious. Nice jazz trumpet here, guys.
Oh yeah, it is nice.
So I was really, really self-conscious about my playing, because again, I couldn't sound like what I wanted to. And that only went away after playing on a cruise ship and doing over 500 concerts. And you still get nervous, even if you're a professional, or even if you've been playing a long time, you'll still get nervous. But the more you put yourself in that situation, and you realize that everyone out there, audience, is there to support you. No one is out there except you, sitting and judging yourself. So the more that you can think that everyone is there to make you sound better, and even if you make a mistake, no one's going to come up to you and say, you made a mistake. Like, no one's really going to say that. So you just don't care. And I've definitely had some interesting mess ups in my time. Totally lost my place in the middle of a string quartet, and you just keep going, you know?
Yeah.
So it's definitely get nervous. But the more you, this is probably a little bit too advanced, but anyone who's meditates, I know a lot of actually elementary schools that do meditation. So if you just sit and breathe with yourself, guys, a few minutes a day and just see how you're feeling. Just check in with yourself. How am I feeling today? The more you do that, the calmer your mind gets and the better that your mind is prepared when you decide to play in front of people. So, yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I love that. Do you have a favorite type of music to play on the violin? I imagine that you like playing all sorts of different kinds of music for different reasons, but if you could just give the students a couple of, I don't know, things.
Because my dad's a conductor, I think I definitely naturally grew up hearing a lot of classical music. So classical music would be, you guys may have learned about Beethoven or Brahms or Mozart or the common three guys that most people know. And that music's really beautiful, but there's so much music out there. I really love Latin music. I love the rhythms and Brazilian music, especially because it's very complex. But I don't listen to classical music, so I don't listen to it, but I play it. So when I'm by myself, I'm always listening to new artists, a lot of indie music. In terms of what I like to play, I've gotten into gypsy jazz a little bit recently, and that's been really, really fun. Yeah, so when I was, again, not to mention again, but when I was on the cruise ship, we played all sorts of repertoire, French music, gypsy music, and I even played like Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin and Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, and that was super fun, playing pop music on the violin as well. So just FYI, the violin is such a great instrument because a lot of different cultures use it in other contexts, so it's not just classical music. So even if you're learning Suzuki, know that the skills that you learn, the techniques that you learn now, you can actually go into a fiddle session. You could go to Ireland or whatever and join a fiddle session, and that's all music that's learned by ear. Or you could go learn flamenco and play Latin music with a guitarist, or you could, even now, you can play rock violin. I've played rock violin with a Trans-Siberian Orchestra in a huge stadium of 20,000 people. So you can play.
Was that
the violin is, yeah.
Was that the biggest concert you ever played?
Yeah, the biggest one I did was New Year's Eve. Joan Jett came on stage, and who did I Love Rock and Roll? Like, didn't even know. She came on stage, and we played in front of 20,000 people, and the energy in the stadium was crazy. And yeah, so that was awesome. And that's all because I started playing music.
Love that. Wow, that is so cool. Great. And cool, you actually ended up answering a couple more of my questions. Just a few
awesome.
more before we sort of take this to a close. Let's see. So you've obviously traveled a lot through music.
Sure.
So you've traveled mostly because you've gotten hired to play for different artists?
Only because I've been playing music have I traveled.
Yeah. And that's something that actually is the same for me too. I've gotten opportunity to travel a lot.
And guys, just so you know, Stephen is a really incredible musician, an amazing composer, which you probably don't hear about, but also
it's not about me. It's not about
I know, but I'm saying we traveled together with his wife as well, Kendra. We all went in college. We went to Europe together, so to sing. So music can take you to those places. Yeah, Stephen, to answer your question, only because of music have I really traveled, or anything related to music. And that is, you don't really get to travel until you're older. Maybe you get an adult job, but the beautiful thing about music, I have met so many different pieces. Right now, I'm doing a recording session with an artist from somewhere in Asia, and recording some stuff for him. I've played for in terms of where I've traveled, you can get a job. The standard thing is getting a job in an orchestra, but you can also teach. And the thing that I thought was really awesome, and obviously now because of COVID, this is different, but when you guys were older, it will be different. I've traveled and worked on a cruise ship. So on a cruise ship, I went to, which is also why I'm in New Zealand, actually. I traveled to New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania, Fiji, New Caledonia, which is an island in the Pacific, Samoa, Hawaii, Alaska, Quebec, Canada, all of New England, the Caribbean. Also indirectly, because of music, I traveled to Brazil. Because music is, cheesy as it sounds, the universal language. You meet people from all over the world that are playing music. So you're united by this common bond.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you don't speak the language, you guys speak the same music. And so you can play with a musician from really Colombia, a lot of Colombian friends. So it widens your whole horizon because you get to meet people that you would never grow up with and play music with them. And and the cruise was really cool because you get to meet people from all over the world, Philippines, Indonesia, a lot of people from the Netherlands. And that was super cool. And I got some really cool pictures because of that.
Love that. When it comes to traveling and just getting to see the world, it sounds like your favorite thing is probably meeting other people and just getting to learn about them and where they come from.
Absolutely. You get to learn so much.
Are there some other things that you enjoy about traveling, or a place that was really special to you?
Yeah. One of the great things about being a musician on a cruise ship is that you can also go off and explore. So I did zip lining in Alaska and in Fiji. I went trekking through Alaska on a glacier. I went to the southernmost tip of New Zealand, and I just did some really incredible random experiences that you would never do until you're probably 70 or 80 years old when you're going on a cruise ship and can afford it. So I did a lot of adventure stuff. I went and hung out with kangaroos in Australia. I went on something called a schooner in Rhode Island, which was one of the first original boats that was ever made, all done by hand. I think the best thing about it is just seeing new places and experiencing other cultures. And because of that, I have a very international range of friends. And it makes you realize that we are all the same. We're all very similar as human beings. And we might be divided by culture or have grown up in a different way. My boyfriend right now, he's Indian. Well, in India, they all eat with their hands. And I thought that's so weird initially. But beautiful thing about that is there's just different, and each culture has their own thing. In Philippines, they eat with a spoon and a fork. But you would never know that unless you lived with other people who are from other countries or had that experience. And so the best thing about music is the diversity that it brings into your life, and it makes you a well-rounded person and a more compassionate human being.
I love that. Well, that feels like a great place to leave it. Thank you so much, Lydia, for taking the time to meet with us. And really appreciate it. And I hope that I guess we'll just end it right there. So scholars.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, Lydia, for being with us and for giving us so much wisdom and information and new knowledge. And thank you, Lydia. Really appreciate
Thank you.
Have fun at your
keep playing music.
Your performance.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, we'll talk to you later.
We'll talk soon. Okay. Thanks, Stephen.